Russ and Julie Paris. How do I introduce you to two people who, for many of you, need no introduction? Most of you know them through their work at Far West and also through their house concert series. They've served on one of them has served on the Far West board since its inception. In fact, the idea of determining and presenting a Best of the West award was spearheaded by Russ Paris. And I can guarantee you he had no thought at the time that he would end up being a recipient of the award. It was a selfless act, which is so typical. Julie served as our treasurer for 8 years, until this year when Ronnie Weinberger took over those duties. Every year when we would send out applications for Best of the West honorees, they would always come up. Their names every year would come up as potential honorees. But the bylaws say that because no one on the Far West board can receive a Best of the West award. So as soon as they were both off the board, the nominations flooded in. They were an obvious choice, and we're thrilled to be able to honor them today. Their house concert series, which many of you have been to, has set the bar for all house concerts in Southern California. And I would, yes. Pardon me. I would suggest to you that they've set the bar for house concerts all over the country. They've been doing it for 19 years. That's a monthly series for 19 years. And I think that alone deserves some applause. Now, I want to ask just for a moment of a personal privilege here. All of you know Russ and Julie through their work here and their house concert series. Russ is also, they're both very talented graphic designers. Many of you know that just recently I retired as director of Thousand Oaks Library. One of the things I'm most proud of in the months before I left was hiring Russ Paris to do our graphics work at Thousand Oaks Library. He has been stellar. We were worried about it because the previous person had been doing it for 20 years, and everybody on the staff kept saying, "What are we going to do without Cindy? What are we going to do without Cindy?" I just said, "Well, I think I have an idea." So I made a call to Russ. He joined the library staff. He's completely enthralled the entire staff, which is no surprise to anybody who knows him, and his work is stellar. So, Russ, thank you so much for that side of things as well. He's beloved by the library and the staff. Russ and Julie are some of the most gracious, giving, and warm people I've ever encountered. And I do have a letter or two I'd like to read from some people who couldn't be here today. I read this the other day in the room, and I almost didn't make it through. So let's hope it goes well. Dear Russ and Julie, there are very few weeks that go by that I do not point someone to your website. I know the website contains the head stuff that house concerts need to get started or make it over the bumps of the road. Smiley face. It's my hope that by some miracle the heart of your site is captured. Okay, if I am truthful, that your heart is captured. You see, as not only a singer-songwriter, a friend, and someone who's had the gift of playing your concert, I can say, wow, your series and you are the real deal. You are the heart of Russ and Julie's house concert series, our community, and I believe musical ambassadors to the world. So it's not surprising to this singer-songwriter that you are both being honored with Far West Best of the West Award. I congratulate you for this honor, the years of hard work, passion, and dedication you have placed in presenting good is in capital letters, live acoustic music, and for being beacons of hope and light for we artistic ships that sometimes flounder at sea, looking for the lighthouse that signals and welcomes us home. That's from Carrie Patrick Clark, who was an official showcase honoree a couple years ago. Dear Russ and Julie, congratulations. Your love of music and your fantastic house concerts have brought us all a little closer to what real, honest Americana music is and how it enriches our lives. We owe you so much for your personal sacrifice and love. Thank you both for all you've done to keep the music alive. That's signed Chris Hillman. Okay, now, to provide a unique perspective on Russ and Julie, and to present them with their award, I'd like to ask Wendy Waldman to come to the podium. Wendy was on the ground floor when Far West began. She's been on the board, or was on the board for many years of the mothership, Folk Alliance International. She's a Grammy Award-winning songwriter and a highly respected record producer. She's a recording artist as well, having recorded solo albums and records with Brindle and the Refugees. Please help me welcome to the podium Wendy Waldman.
Well, thanks, guys. It's nothing new for us, as Chris pointed out, to be performing while folks are eating. Who among us has not played that bar, that gig? I'm really happy to be here. I see a lot of familiar faces, good old friends, and you know I'm a bit of a hermit, so I just want to say it's really nice to see you all. The thing that's most heartening is that I see some new faces. I see like some of the young people in the back kind of going, well, okay, man, you know, what are we doing here? And Steve, thank you for saving me from having to do some of the biographical material. It's really heartening that we're growing as big as we are. It says that, and especially that these awards, which happen to be, by the way, for women, with the exception of Russ, who's an honorary woman, presented by mostly women, except the Summer Song male members who are honorary women. Considering that any endeavor that on behalf of or including folk and acoustic artists is like herding cats, that's actually what we're doing, celebrating Russ and Julie, because they've been herding cats for decades, and with remarkable success. But there's actually a greater context, and I want to, especially for those of you who don't really get the historical context, and anybody who knows me knows that if I was asked to present, there would be a sort of a two-bit philosophical and historical footnote. It's cool that they've done all that they've done. But, you know, and you've seen the awards and all that kind of stuff, but there's something else that makes this so important. So I want to actually take a moment, especially to the new people, and ask you a simple question. What is a house concert? So I was putting on way too much makeup, and I was thinking to myself, define it, Waldman. Okay. It's more than an opportunity for you to sell some CDs and make a little bit of money to get to your next gig, and in the case of Russ and Julie's, to eat the most mind-boggling dessert buffet this side of Vienna. The definition I came up with is this. It's the act of bringing public performers into a private, curated setting for the benefit of the artist, the audience, and the arts in general. We call it a house concert today in 2015 in America, but in other times it existed with different names and in different settings, but it always has the same basic elements. Connecting the arts and artists to an appreciative audience, which otherwise might not have happened for any number of reasons. And here are some examples. Number one, cultural. We're sure that in ancient Greece, there were private performances by poets, playwrights, musicians, presented by supporters and patrons. It's arguable, maybe some of these great Greek playwrights we might not have known had there not been that kind of support. Gigs were hard to come by in ancient Greece. In the Middle Ages, gigs were even harder to come by, Middle Ages and the Renaissance. So we see in Europe especially, when concert work was so scarce, does this sound familiar to anybody? The royal courts and the affluent families supported and presented artists in their homes, allowing these artists to A, eat, B, work, C, find an audience and continue working. Okay, so we have a cultural definition. Next definition, very serious, political. Here's a good example. During the communist times in Eastern Europe, and especially in Poland, there were secret house concerts. It's very famous now. Polish poets, playwrights, lecturers, and musicians who had been banned by the communist authorities were giving at great risk to themselves and their audiences performances that were secret. You had to know how to find them. But these performances contributed to emboldening a people to friggin' overturn the USSR. Not bad, not bad. And in our own country, during the Depression and the subsequent union movement, there were many house concerts and presentations on the part of people like Woody Guthrie, Utah Phillips, Joe Hill, Pete Seeger, who also helped to embolden this country to unionize. Okay, so also at great risk, by the way, as we know, to themselves. So that's the second fundamental issue that house concerts have provided. Different names, same event. The third, which I think a lot of you know the most, is the economic. In hard times in America, in the 20s all the way through the 40s, there were things called rent parties, especially in the black communities, where people would have house concerts and everybody would throw money in the kitty so that the presenter or whoever was the beneficiary could pay their rent. Jazz musicians, folk musicians, artists of all types contributed to that. So now we know house concerts have always existed throughout history and cultures. They wax and they wane. They gain strength mysteriously in answer to various needs at any time in the culture for cultural, political, and economic reasons. Now, in our time, especially those of you who are new here, we're kind of facing a combination of all three. Number one, the music business that a lot of us oldsters grew up with and knew and counted on has melted away. It's gone, it's vanished. The club scene that we counted on, that built our careers, that built many of the careers of the people we idolized, is gone. Radio, even in its genius in the 70s, which played every kind of music before formatting. Radio, which was a powerful educational tool in American popular culture, has become some kind of a horrifying nightmare, with the exception of our public stations. And it's inaccessible. And of course, records. Now, some of you don't know what those are, especially the kids in the back, but we used to sell our music and actually make some money doing that. So all that's gone. A small percentage, maybe 2%, maybe half of 1% of artists now in American popular culture are able to connect with the audience. The rest of us, 99.5%, have been marginalized. That means new artists and even old farts like me, all of us, we've been marginalized because we can't have access to these former avenues that we had. So here's our big three. We can't connect culturally, we can't make a living, and we politically cannot go up against this monolithic media thing that has taken over our country. So now back to Russ and Julie. But you need that context because, you know, it's really cool that, yeah, man, they've had this house concert and it's run for a while, and, you know, but they've been doing this for 19 years. They've presented over 200 concerts, quietly, Steadfastly, regularly, they've been connecting artists and audiences. They've been educating audiences like crazy, as well as us artists. They've taught us how to find our audience again, or how to find our audience for the first time. But beyond that, which in itself would be, okay, that's brilliant, let's give them an award. Beyond that, they've taken their mission to a much larger arena. They're into community building, outreach, support. Now, remember, this is all happening in the great demon of the music world, Los Angeles. It takes a lot of chutzpah to mount an acoustic house concert in the heart of the devil in Los Angeles, which is the toughest city on earth for music. And coming from Hollywood, I can say there's been times when our community's been kind of nasty to each other. Those days, thankfully, are gone because we're all in a sinking ship, so now everybody's supportive of each other. However, Russ and Julie always were. They regularly support and advertise and volunteer at everybody else's damn house concert, at everybody else's acoustic performances. They've made websites where you can connect to whatever's going on in LA. They've provided tremendous leadership in educating our country and how a house concert should be. And we've gone, you know, in answer to the big three that we face, we see now there are approximately 1,000 house concerts in America. Somehow, mysteriously, the people are finding a way, and the audience is finding a way to find its artists, and the artists likewise. Now, these guys have done so much, not only for themselves and their small mailing list, which is now huge, and their neighbors, and also to fatten all of us with their dessert bar. They've done a huge amount of work in supporting everybody else who's trying to do that. As again, I point out all of this in the toughest city on earth for that. One of the longest running house concerts in this phase of our cultural need. I don't know how long the house concerts ran in ancient Greece. I promise next time I'll have those notes. So, in the form of two very gentle, very quiet, very devoted people, a major and as yet unmeasured impact and change has been brought about in our community, and likewise through their example and leadership across the country, and now overseas because there's house concerts in Europe. Who knows? Without such dedication in the past, we might not have even known great names like Beethoven, Bach, Allen Ginsberg, Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie. And the same is true for today. Who's playing a house concert today that's going to rise through the ranks and become a name that we will all recognize and that will go down in history? And I think it's important for us to remember when we honor house concerts, to remember the cultural, political, economic, and world-changing impact that they have. And in this regard, Russ and Julie Paris have led the way. I think of them with this mantra: service, humility, courage, leadership, and absolute dedication and commitment. They've impacted our world very quietly in a way that will resound loudly for decades to come, like an explosion. On a personal note, I want to say, I don't tell you this much because you know how I am, but you have had a huge, huge impact on my career, which already people thought looked good, but it wasn't anything like it became after I started playing your house concerts and learning about house concert culture and the independent music movement. Thank you, Chris. And Penny, also thank you for your incredible work. But Russ and Julie, I want you to know it really is a huge honor. And Far West, you did right to present the Best of the West Ambassador Award to Russ and Julie Paris of Russ and Julie's House Concerts.
Wow, thank you so much. All we wanted to do was share a little music. I want to first thank the Far West Board of Directors for this honor, and thank you to the Best of the West Chair, Steve Brogden, and our very good friend Wendy Waldman for her inspiring words. And your friendship means so much to us. And Wendy's always cutting me off every time I start talking about how wonderful her music is, but I was a big fan from the beginning. And if you've never heard her first album that Rolling Stone called the Singer-Songwriter Album of the Year back in 1973, in the height of the singer-songwriters, do check out the album. Yeah, you're not that old. There's a lot more coming. We especially want to thank Severn Brown, who's here today. Severn Brown and James Coverly Smith for our first show 19 years ago. That started us off in style, and we would not be here without you. You really changed our lives forever. Special thanks to our dear friends Severn Brown, Penny Nichols, Kenny Edwards, Wendy Waldman, Freebo, Dan Navarro, Eric Lowen, Lawrence Juber, John McEuen, James Lee Stanley, for your early and steady support of our house concert series. You helped us get established and supported us through all the years. And of course, to all the other musicians in this room and everywhere else who've played our series over the years, I mean, it's really all been about sharing the music. That's what it is to us. And without you, we wouldn't have a series and we wouldn't have Far West. So we thank you. It's too many to mention individually, but thank you very much. For us, it's always been about the music. Also, I want to give a very special thanks and shout out to Ron Sarfati, who beyond being our friend, for nearly 40 years now, has attended most of our shows and has been there for us as a sound engineer, recorded many of our shows, and designed and built our stage. Also want to quickly thank John Jacob for seeing a need and helping to perfect our lighting system. You know, it's about community. People come in, they see a need, and they just do it. And thank you, John. To our community of co-presenters, whom we know virtually and those we know in person, we believe strongly in cross-promotion and in building community. And that expands our audience. This was the inspiration behind our website, acousticmusic101.com, which is an effort to help promote each other and all the folk and acoustic music happening in our hometown community and beyond. We're grateful for your ongoing support, and that we've found that building community helps all of us. It increases audience and shares that music with more and more people.
We also want to thank our fellow Far West founders, Ross and Howard Larman, Elaine and Clark Weissman, Steve and Michelle Dolson, I'm trying to find faces, Lita and Steve Shapiro, Claudia Russell and Bruce Kaplan, Nick Smith and Mary Catherine Alden, who helped to form and create this warm and nurturing music community and business networking microcosm that we call Far West. It's a community we're all proud of. And we thank our parents for bringing us up in good homes with lots of music in it. To our sons and their girls, Daniel and Ashley, Michael and Samantha, and Joshua and Nikki, who had their lives continually invaded by musicians, and our home guests, and often lost us to hours and years that we put into volunteering positions in the community. We thank you for your patience and your indulgence. They all grew up exposed to music of all types, to varieties of all types of people, instruments, and genres. They learned to be hosts in their own home, and they learned the importance of welcoming and helping others. And we think they turned out pretty darn good. We'd like to acknowledge our son Joshua, who's here today, and our godson Christopher, who's also here today. And to our very, very special and close friends, Michael and Margaret and Ella and Jonah, thank you for joining us as well. We are so proud of the music community that we help to nurture, that has in turn nurtured others and given musicians all over the world a place to play, and guests a place to see them. In this increasingly impersonal virtual world that we live in, we feel it's more important than ever to build relationships to face, and to help creative, beautiful people find a place to express themselves, and to help audience members find places to enjoy this creative outlet. It's a personal joy and privilege. Thank you. I do want to mention one more quick thing, and Joshua's rolling his eyes. This morning in the middle of the night, Joshua's fiance Nikki got a phone call from her cousin Nick, who's got cystic fibrosis. He's 32 years old, and he right now is in the hospital at Stanford Medical Center getting lungs. So, please, this is such a warm and amazing community. Give just a second to send up a prayer to Nick, to the surgeons that are guiding their hands in his body, and to the donor and the donor's parents, the donor's family that are all part of this.
Thank you, and I also want to mention that we really congratulate our fellow awardees who are very deserving, and Penny Nichols was one of those who really was instrumental in helping us get going, because she performed with Steve Noonan at our very, very second house concert right after Severance, and Penny's the one who introduced us to so many people within the music community. Penny introduced us to people and said, gee, you know who loved performing here? And if it wasn't for her, I don't know that we would be where we are today. So thank you very much, Penny, and congratulations. Thank you all.